Nandana Braja Janarandana Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Yashodanandana Braja Janarandana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivajika Jaya Asto Tarasharashi Śrīmad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam Ki Nitai Gaura Premanandi Namo Vishwaraya Krishna Sabhalai Shali Parijam Prabhu Charamane Namo Vishwaraya Krishna Sabhalai Shali Bhaktivedanta Swami Chanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Reading from Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 29, talks between Narada and King Prachinibahi. Text number? Text number 9. Akshinena shike asyam iti pancha pura kritaha dakshina dakshina karna uttara chottara smritaha paschime ityado dvaro gudam sishnam ihochyate akshinena shike asyam iti pancha pura kritaha. Dakshina dakshinaha karna. Uttara chottara smritaha. Paschime ityado dvaro. Gudam shishnam mihochyate. Akshini, 2 eyes. Nasike, 2 nostrils. Asyam, the mouth. Iti, thus. Pancha, 5. Puraha, on the front. Kritaha, made. Dakshina, southern gate. Dakshinaha, right. Karnaha, ear. Uttara, northern gate. Cha, also. Uttaraha, left ear. Smritaha, understood. Paschime, on the west. Iti, thus. Adhaha, downward. Dvaro, 2 gates. Gudam, rectum. Shishnam, genital. Iha, here. Uchyate, is said. 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, and a mouth, altogether 5, are situated in the front. The right ear is accepted as the southern gate, and the left ear is the northern gate. The gates on the eastern side, the eyes, nose, and mouth are thus, hang on, oops, I'm reading the purport. Whoa. Hold on. Okay, I'll just read the whole translation. Two eyes, 2 nostrils, and a mouth, altogether 5, are situated in the front. The right ear is accepted as the southern gate, and the left ear is the northern gate. The 2 holes or gates situated in the west are known as the rectum and genital. So we've got 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, and a mouth. That's 5, situated in the front. The right ear, which is a 6th hole, and there's a 7th hole. So this is the southern gate. And the left ear is the northern gate. The 2 holes or gates situated in the west, down the bottom, are known as the rectum and genital. Purport: of all sides, the eastern is considered most important, primarily because the sun rises from that direction. The gates on the eastern side, the eyes, nose and mouth, are thus very important gates in the body. So that's all pretty straightforward. When you think about it. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manohopishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupakoda Mahayam Tadatisva Padantikam Mukam karoti vachalam pangum rangayate karim yadkripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam. So, So here we're getting a description of the gates, the different gates of the body and the directions which they represent. Prabhupada says that of all sides, the most important is the eastern side. Right? Which for us is over here somewhere, east. Right? We're on this, the temple's not facing the cardinal directions. That's a bit offside. But the most important direction is the east, because from the east comes the sun. Right? And why is the sun important then? The sun is important because it gives light. Right? If we didn't have the sun, where would we be? We probably wouldn't exist. Right? The sun is one of Krishna's two eyes. Right? The sun and the moon are described as being the eyes. And through which one gets vision, sight. And of course, being able to see things clearly is essential for life. Life itself is dependent on sight. And of course the sun is pretty much, we could describe the sun as being the source of all life. The sun and the moon. Right? So, in the various directions of the body, there are the eyes, the nostrils and the mouth are situated on the eastern side. So this is the eastern side of the body. Then on the southern side is the right ear. And on the northern side is the left ear. Right? And then in the western side are the rectum and the genital. The two holes or gates situated in the west are known as the rectum and the genital. So east, west, east, west, east, west, north, south. Right? Okay, so we'll move on to the next verse. That's pretty much it. Right? It's more or less storyline. There's not a lot of philosophy in this. Although, you know, the eastern side is obviously the eyes and the nose and the mouth is through which we engage with a lot of the world. And a lot of our consciousness is focused on what we see. You know, even in the English language, we have this statement, seeing is believing. Right? If I haven't seen it, then I don't believe it. Of course, as I've heard people say recently, none of us can see the coronavirus, right? But we all believe in it. Right? So seeing isn't always believing, because there's a lot of things that we can't see that still exist. Right? You can't see the wind, but you can see the effects of the wind. Right? You can't see it. You can feel it, but you can't see it. So, seeing, and especially in our interaction with the world and with everything that we do, the face is considered to be the most prominent and the most important part of the body, well, as is indicated by these statements. The face is. If I want to know you, if you want to know me, then you look at my face, right? And Prabhupada quotes even that face is the index to the mind, and the mind reveals the inner workings of the man, right? Like Prabhupada says, what Krishna explains, what are the qualities of a person who's situated in transcendence, a stita muni, right? A stita muni. There are different types of munis, and Prabhupada quotes that if a muni doesn't think different, there's a shastric quotation that Prabhupada quotes in the Bhagavad Gita, where it's described that if a muni doesn't think differently from everybody, from all of the other munis, then he's not a muni, right? And that's not to say that we all think the same, right? I was looking at a video last night by Krishna Chetra Swami, and he was quoting Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada wanted independently thoughtful men and women. So it's not that we all think the same, but there are certain qualities of a stitadhira muni, in other words, a devotee, a bhakti yogi, that distinguish their character from others. And that character is such that they are always thinking about service to Krishna. They're always fixed. Their mind is always fixed on service to the Lord in the various items and practices of bhakti or devotional service. And Prabhupada mentions that one of the most important qualities of a person is how they what? What's the first qualification that we're looking for to determine what the quality of the man is? What's the first qualification? How they speak. Yes, how they speak. And Prabhupada makes the point that a fool isn't revealed until he speaks, right? A man may be very well dressed and appear as being very smart, no? You know, there's that saying, don't judge a book by its cover, right? My father used to take us to the library every Tuesday when I was, I don't know, from the age of 6 or 7, maybe 5, but no, probably not reading that. But once me and my brothers were adept at reading, then my father would take us. And of course we read many of the books in the library for kids. And then my father would, and you know, it was easy when the children's books, they've got fancy pictures and stuff, so it was easy to find a good book. But then as things got more complicated, then the covers of the books were not a good indication of what the book was. I remember often My father would say, here, this is a good book, you should read this. And I'd look at it and I'd say, no, I don't like that. didn't like the cover. Similarly, judging people just by how they look, it's not a good test of a person's character. And especially everybody knows how to dress up and look good, right? Not difficult to present yourselves as being very together when in actual fact you're a complete mess. Huh? So, how do we test the qualifications of a devotee? How do we test the qualifications of anybody? Right? And again, illustrating this point, that this part of the body is, the eastern side is the most important side. Right? Because that's where people speak, right? The mouth is there. And we can test the quality of a person by how they speak. Right? Because what they say will be an indication of what? What is the speaking representative of? Their thoughts. Yes, what are they thinking of? Yeah, nah. Yeah, nah. If you've lived in country Australia, or even in the city too, yeah, nah. So, the quality of a man, or a woman for that matter, anybody, the quality of a devotee is tested, right? Is tested by how they speak. And Prabhupada makes a point in the Bhagavad Gita. In fact, or indeed, a fool is not revealed until he speaks. Right? So, well-dressed man, but still a fool. Right? So, we can further test, because it is also possible to just speak platitudes, or it is possible to speak and still not fully reveal everything of the character. Right? And so therefore we also test what a person says and what a person does. Right? There is a further test. A further test. But based on this, the eyes, the nose and the mouth are very, they're considered to be in the most important direction, the easterly direction, and in which the eyes, the nose, and the mouth, of course, and with mouth comes taste, right? So these are very important senses by which or through which we engage with the material energy. Right? Seeing things, smelling things, right? One of the symptoms of the COVID-19 is that people lose their sense of smell, which is very interesting. Right? Sometimes when you get a cold, you lose your sense of smell. There's some what do they call it? Olfactory glands, or there's quite a the face is a very complicated mechanism, extremely complicated mechanism when you think about it. Because we can tell a person's thoughts by the way their face works. I remember when I got that what's it called? Palsy. I've forgotten the first. And I lost the sense in my left side. Bell's palsy. Has symptoms. It has symptoms as if you've had a stroke, but it's not. So I freak out. Because I woke up in the morning and I try. When you clean your teeth, you spit. And I tried to spit and it went out, went all. I thought, what's going on here? What's happening? And I had a very, very, very small cold sore the week before, very, very small, but it was sensitive. And so that's where it came from. It's a viral infection that exists, it's floating around everywhere. And it goes away pretty much of its own accord. But it inflames the nerves. And so the nerves, and there's holes here in the cranium where these nerves come out and manage all of your face, right? And so when it gets inflamed, then the passage of the flow of, the internal electricity that's going on in the body. Just see how subtle the body is, how subtle a machine it is, right? And so because of that inflammation, then the nerve signals to the muscles of the face stop working, and then the face kind of drops down. You could see that my face was slightly out of shape, right? So very, very, very subtle mechanisms going on. So, somebody's smiling, somebody's frowning, all of these, what do you call it? Indicators. They're all indicators of how, and it's how we communicate too, right? We communicate through facial expressions, especially the Indian culture. There's a whole physiognomy of facial communications. You can practically have a conversation without saying any words. Right? It's called body language. Yeah, Tom's shaking his head. He's been living with you guys for so long now, he knows how to. He's picked it up. I picked it up. We've all picked it up due to association. Right? But just see, how important the face actually is. And how we engage with the material, with the material energy through the face. Smelling, eating, right? Speaking. These. Although hearing is also one of the most important senses. And so they have their own directions, right? North and south, east, north, south, west. And also, the rectum and the genital, also important. If they're not working properly, watch out. Right? It'll be a real pain. So all of these different elements of the body are important. And even, you find on some occasions the hearing is considered to be the most important. Right? Because, the sight, the smelling, the tasting give us an impression of, of the creation, if you like. But through the ears, we can learn of things that we can't see, smell, taste. Right? We can hear information of the spiritual world. We can hear all of the information about the material world. So, okay, let's just read on, shall we? Because the purports are not very... And we can finish here now, but let's keep going. Kadyata vyamukhi chatra netre ekatra nirmite rupam vibrajitam avyam vichaste chakshusheshvaraha. The two gates named Kadyota and Aviramukhi, which have been spoken of, are the two eyes side by side in one place. The eyes. The town named Vibrajita should be understood as form. Right? Why is form important to the eyes? Huh? Why is form important to the eyes? In this way, the two eyes are always engaged in seeing different kinds of forms. Right? And being able to distinguish between one and another is a function of the eyes in the various forms. Purport: the two eyes are attracted by brilliant things like light. Sometimes we find that little insects are attracted by the brightness of fire and thus enter into it. Prabhupada describes the material energy as being like fire, very attractive. But when you enter into it, you're burnt up. And thus enter into it. Similarly, the two eyes of the living entity are attracted by bright and beautiful forms. They are entangled in these forms exactly as the insect becomes attracted to fire. Whoa. And this is why people dress up. Right? In fact, that's what they're recommending. If you're stuck at home, then, and you're lacking entertainment, look in your wardrobe and then dress up. I guess then, take a selfie and share it with your friends on Facebook or whatever, Instagram. Huh? This is what people do to show off, right? To show off, here's who I am, but, it's so ephemeral. But we're attracted by those ephemeral forms, and especially when they're bright and attractively decorated. The eyes are attracted to that bright and beautiful forms. But it's all illusion. Yet the material energy has great power, huge, enormous power to create these forms which are temporary and so therefore illusory, right? And we become completely absorbed in them. This is why the eyes, in one sense, they have to be controlled. Right? The senses of a stita dhir muni are controlled. Prabhupada explains, Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita that the senses are like serpents and they want to do their own thing. They want to be engaged in all sorts of activities, whatever they see. Ooh. And in fact, modern multimedia, social media, mass media exploits the citizenry because they have uncontrolled senses, right? And they're always dishing up images that are attractive to impel us to engage our senses with the objects of the senses. And usually, we're encouraged to spend money, being attracted by the imagery of marketing, effectively. That's what it is. And anything that can be sold will be accompanied usually by a scantily dressed woman, right? Even, I remember when we were selling candles and paintings and whatever it was, we used to go into the pubs and into the commercial and the manufacturing areas as well, into the workshops. And you see car parts, right? There's nothing attractive about, a clutch plate that goes into the gearbox of a car, right? But what do they do to sell a clutch plate for a gearbox, which is not sexy at all? They have a woman with a bikini next to it, right? And what's the theory of this is not very complicated, right? Men are going to be attracted by the form of a woman, right? It's not rocket science, and it's taken advantage of, right? So this is why the eyes, in one sense, they're important, but at the same time, the images that the material energy creates are temporary and so therefore illusory, but that doesn't necessarily detract from the power of the material energy to attract the senses, right? We just have to be very careful. That's why the devotees are trained to see the forms of the Lord, right? And to understand and appreciate the eternal nature of the spiritual form and the temporary nature of the material form, right? Otherwise, what happens? We become absorbed in the material forms and we become completely engrossed and engaged with those external forms. Or we become engrossed in our own form and want to decorate it and have it attract others. We want to be attractive and attract others. So the seeing is not necessarily believing. Seeing can be a huge trap. Right? We become entangled here. They are entangled in these forms exactly as the insect becomes attracted to fire. And then, one of the reasons why we hear the Bhagavatam and we hear the Bhagavad Gita, because instead of seeing with the material eyes, one has to start seeing with spiritual eyes. And that spiritual vision is Shastra Chakshush, right? To see with the eye of Shastra. This is why we regularly, why it's recommended that we read Srila Prabhupada's books. Because the way that a devotee sees the world is different. It's completely different to the way that the materialist views the forms of material nature. The devotee has to see everything from the spiritual perspective. Otherwise, the material energy will just gobble us up. You know, even for a devotee, the senses are going to be attracted to the objects of the senses, right? The eyes will be naturally attracted to the forms of material energy, even for a devotee. You know, there's that anecdote where Srila Prabhupada was left alone in a room by one of his disciples with an attractive woman, a younger woman, of course. You know, Prabhupada was in his 70s, right? And so even a 30 or a 40-year-old woman would be much younger than him, right? And his disciple left him, unthinking, you know, and then Prabhupada chastised him. Why did you leave me here with this young woman? Not healthy for a sannyasi to be alone. And Prabhupada made a comment, I'm not sure if this is exactly the same occasion, but Prabhupada said, you know, I can still tell the difference between an ugly and an attractive woman. Huh? It's not that the devotee, you know, just always sees things from the transcendental perspective. There's also the material perspective, right? We're all in material bodies. We have material senses. And so we're going, and this is our Achincha Bheda Abheda Tattva. We need to be able to see on the spiritual platform, but that doesn't negate the material environment in which we live and the power of the material energy to override our spiritual perspective. Right? This is why hearing and chanting and study of the Shastra is important for the devotees, so that we can override the material, you know, which is the default, right? And be able to see the substrata of spiritual energy working, right? The Bhagavatam explains, just like here, the Bhagavatam is explaining how the material energy works, right? How the body functions and the various features, right? And so when we absorb our consciousness in this viewpoint of everything around us, that'll override our default, boom, ooh, there's an attractive lady, right? We need to be able to see from the spiritual perspective that, okay, the material energy is making one presentation, but here's what's actually going on, right? Tamal Krishna Maharaj described it once here in Melbourne. He said he was at the airport and he saw a very attractive young girl. But then in the same, you know, in the next moment, he saw a very old, shriveled up lady, right? And so he says, I was able to see almost simultaneously the workings of the material energy, right? 1 minute we're very attractive, the next minute all you know, wrinkled and shriveled up, right? Yeah. So, and not attractive, right? So you can see the working of time, the time factor, and the power of the material. You know, 1 minute it's all like, whoa, and then the next minute, yuck, right? You know, Prabhupada tells the story of liquid beauty. Liquid beauty. It's all very temporary and ephemeral. Powerful, but it's powerful. It is powerful. The material energy is so powerful that even despite the best intelligence and the greatest discrimination, still it has, this power to overcome, override, and usually through the eyes, right? What we see. Ooh. So why in that sense, the ears are important, because we can hear the transcendental sound vibration and hear the topics like the Śrīmad Bhāgavatam. And in one sense, it's interesting actually, with reading books, we're actually using eyes, right? But actually, it's the form of the sound vibration that we're absorbing through our eyes. This is why the book is worshipable, because it is the deity form of the words, of the instructions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the previous acharyas and the Mahajans, right? The Mahajanas is what we get through the Bhagavatam, especially. Narada Muni is speaking, right? So the eyes are used to then absorb that sound vibration, but subtly, right? Subtly, very subtle, but powerful, extraordinarily powerful. So that we're able to then see everything from the material perspective, but see the substrata of the spiritual energy working, right? Because that's what's going on. Effectively, underneath all of the working of the material energy is ultimately the spiritual energy. Actually, it's not material. It's just when it's seen separated from Krishna, right? And that's why studying the Shastra is so important, because with that vision, we instead of seeing things as Krishna's separated energy, we start to see the connections again, right? We see it connected to Krishna. And of course, that's the vision of a devotee. A devotee is able to see, a sadhu is able to see everything in relationship with Krishna. Right? So rather than seeing with the material eyes, and of course we need to see with the material eyes, and we will see the material form, we have to. But the consequence of seeing the deities, and especially studying the Shastra, gives us the ability to see through the veil of material energy and see Krishna working within everything. That's the plan, right? That's the purpose of studying the Shastras, and why the study of the Shastra is so important. Otherwise, we'll just become a materialist again by the influence, by the power of the material energy. Exceptionally powerful. Okay, does anybody have any comments or questions? Gentlemen.
Hare Krishna. Why is it that even for a devotee, when they have a trained intelligence, why is it that we still sometimes fall down?
We're conditioned souls. And so habituated. We have habits. And there are for each of us different combinations of the objects of the senses that will stimulate a particular response. that we're just so habituated to responding in that way that we haven't learnt yet to break the cycle of, circumstance and then response. We're just conditioned to that response. We need to catch the point the point where we make the decision to act. Because we're conditioned, we respond or we react according to that habit, previous habits, previous conditionings, right? And that's why the hearing of the Shastra is so important, because it enables us to distinguish that point at which we make the decision unconsciously. We need to become conscious of the fact that we're making those decisions. Does that make sense? We do it unconsciously, but we've got to break the cycle and be aware of the fact that we're responding to certain stimuli in a conditioned way, and that we have choices. We can respond in a different way, right? So it's in that moment of decision making where we need to catch the habit and then break it. Says he. This is me speaking theoretically here. But that's why we need to study the Shastra, because at least the Shastra will give us the theoretical understanding. And then eventually, by hearing often enough and by good association, good company, and by practice, right, this is why we're sadhakas. By practice, we learn to cultivate the appropriate responses to the various stimuli or the various settings and engagements that we'll find ourselves in, invariably responding to in ways that we think, we realise later, that's not the right way to respond. So we've got to, self-realisation sometimes means uncovering our faults and becoming aware of them before we're then able to deal with them. Right? We need to become conscious of the fact that I'm making mistakes. Most people, speaking for myself, I walk around thinking I'm perfect. Right? Most people do. It's hard to live with yourself when you know that you're not perfect. It's painful. Got to do something about it, right? So we like to walk around, and this is the cheating propensity. We have these 4 defects, right? And the worst one is cheating, because we're not perfect, but we think we are. We cheat ourselves, actually, and then in the process try to cheat others. So part of self-realization, and it's anatta nivritti in one sense. It's the stage of realizing one's imperfections, right? Realizing what they are, analysing them, discussing them with the devotees to work out what is the appropriate response for me in this situation. How should I be responding to this situation? Why am I responding in the way that I do? Right? Am I envious of others? Well, yes, probably. Right? Why is my response what it is in these circumstances? Why is it inappropriate? And often, it falls on our mentality. So it requires introspection to deal with that. Right? And then practice. And we may not get it right every time. Right? But if we maintain the humility and the sense of purpose, and this can be grinding on a devotee, because we're working with anattas that have been accumulated after many, many lifetimes, and they don't go away very quickly, right? And the pain of having to deal with that can become a burden for the devotees. And they think, I've been chanting Hare Krishna for all of these years and I'm still an idiot. Right? No, but what happens is then they start to blame the process. They lose faith in the process because they don't stick at it strictly. But Prabhupada says the process of bhakti is automatic. But, sticking to the process is not so easy. It's not so easy. It requires a lot of hard work. Right? And even then, still, the anarthas, still the smell of the anartha still remains. So one has to be tolerant and patient and forbearing. Forbearance is required. We're now high-teched. Bhakta Pete wants us to also take questions from people who are at home. Hey? How are you going to do that?
Hare Krishna.
They're going to have to dial us up on Skype or something. Comment on YouTube. Yeah. Somebody's got to have YouTube on with the sound off. Yeah, but otherwise it feeds back. You get that.
Prabhu, in your lecture, in the starting of the lecture, you said they are Stithadir Muni.
Stithadir Muni, yes. Yeah. Stithadir. Fixed intelligence.
Fixed intelligence.
Yes.
And you also said the Munis are those who have different opinions.
They're not Stithadir Munis. There's a difference between the two.
Okay.
The Stithadir Muni is fixed in his bhakti, in his service to Krishna. The regular Munis have a different philosophy. Right? They have a different presentation, each one of them. A different point of view that make them a real Muni as such.
So can we say the devotees of Lord Krishna, they are the Stithadir Munis?
Yes.
Because they are borrowing the intelligence from Krishna.
Yeah. And look at the sages at Naimisharanya. And look at the sages that came to the bank of the Ganga when Maharaj Parikshit was preparing to die. And there were thousands, tens of thousands of munis and rishis came. And one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons why Sukadeva Goswami gave so many instructions on so many different topics was to attract all of the various groups of thinkers, right? And addresses so many points of view, because he's addressing all of the varieties of philosophy in the minds of the sages and the munis that had come to witness Maharaj Parikshit's departure, right? And so there's so many viewpoints being expressed by Sukadeva Goswami, addressing all of the various philosophers or philosophies that were present in all of the rishis and sages that were there. Because not all of them were devotees, right? And we know from the presentations given in the Puranas, and especially in the Bhagavatam, how there's all of these varieties of philosophies, right? So a Muni is distinguished, Prabhupada says, because he has a different philosophy or a different theory, right? But the devotee is the real Muni in the sense of a thinker, right? Somebody who thinks. And how does he think? He thinks, how can I serve Krishna? That's his thinking, right? That's his distinguishing character. And so that's the kind of muni that Krishna's recommending we be. That our thinking is not to be different from everybody else, but our and will naturally be different because each one of us has our own personality. But with the devotees, we all think of our service to the Lord, our relationship with the Lord, but at the same time also we manifest our individuality, our personality. We all kind of think the same, but are still individuals, right? We still maintain our individuality and our personality, right?
Yep, thank you.
So yes, Muni, be a Muni, but a Stita dear Muni. And you'll still have your personality, you'll still have your identity. And Prabhupada encourages us to think about our philosophy. He actually encourages mental speculation, right? But mental speculation based on Shastric principles, not the mental speculation of, oh, I think this, or I think that, or I think another thing. But the thinking is based on the statements that we observe in the Shastra. And very often there are contradictions, right? Just like, there's always this debate on Ram Navami. What time are we going to break the fast? And is it going to be a grains feast? Right? What is it going to be? And even Srila Prabhupada says that we should observe it like it's Gaur Purnima. Right? Prabhupada says that in his letters. Yet, when Srila Prabhupada himself celebrated Ram Navami, what did he do? He never followed that advice. He observed it with a half-day fast and a grain feast. Right? You know that? So we, the SAC, the Shastric Advisory Committee, recommends that the devotees celebrate these events after following in the footsteps of Srila Prabhupada, so that the devotees are engaged in the essential elements of a Hare Krishna festival, which is kirtan, right? A celebration of ritual, we could say, right? So Abhishek, right? Darshan, special dressing of the deities, Abhishek, a class or a lecture on the importance of the occasion with a philosophical understanding of what's going on. And then, and usually that's done after or around about the time of the appearance of the particular person that's being celebrated. And then what happens? Yeah, a feast. Right? What's a Hare Krishna festival if there's no prasadam? How many of us would go? Right? And if we serve up weird, we serve up weird prasadam, right? Well, what's that? Right? We only have Sago Sabudana Khichdi. Right? It's going to be what? One of the things that attracted me to Krishna consciousness was prasadam. You know, I was into philosophy and I liked to chant Hare Krishna, but when I had my first samosa, I thought, wow, this is it, right? But even then then after the samosa they gave me a gulab jamun, I spat it out. I just went, what? What is that? That was such an attack on my senses that I'd never had before. I was like, this thing is so sweet. But, you know, when I had that, my friends had gone to the temple for Govardhan Puja, right? And they brought home the samosas and gulab jamuns and other things, you know. And when I ate the samosa, because I was already a vegetarian at that stage, right? And was cooking primarily Indian dishes because there were from memory, this is 1978, there were only 2 cookbooks, vegetarian cookbooks that I could find in the whole of Adelaide, right? And I've still got one of them. It's called the Yogi Cookbook. A little yellow book, and I used to cook, and I hadn't been introduced at that point to Indian cooking. Although we used to go to there was a restaurant in Adelaide called the Ceylon Hut, and it was vegetarian, right? And we used to go there. That's where I got introduced to sabjis and different things, and chilies, right? But then when I tasted the prasadam I thought, wow. You know, this is where if philosophy fails, prasadam wins. Yep. And that keeps you stita dear, right? Prasadam keeps us fixed. So, you know, you may have had the biggest struggle of your life getting through Mangalarti, chanting your rounds, greeting the deities, and the Bhagavatam class, right? The biggest struggle of your life, but then when it comes to breakfast, everything is resolved. All contradictions are resolved. Eating Jnana Samudra's offering. Hey? All of the philosophical conundrums of the Bhagavatam class are put aside. And it's prasad sevaya, right? Karivara jiva jai. We control the tongue and the mind. Okay, Grantaraj Śrīmad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhaktivedanta ki jai. Hare Krishna.